Hello and welcome to Mastering Charizard Dusknoir, the ultimate guide to play what I think is going to be one of the strongest decks in the brand new format Shrouded Fable, plus for the World Championships in Hawaii next month. So in today's video, I'm going to break down how and why you should play Charizard Dusknoir and why I think Dusknoir is going to be the best partner for Charizard moving forward. Also look at the in-depth look at my deck list for Charizard Dusknoir, talk about the different counts about my sort of avenue and strategy for Charizard Dusknoir, plus some of the other tech inclusion which you could effectively include in Charizard EX, hasn't been included in my deck, but could be added for yours for additional flair factor. Plus looking at the additional board setup as well, for your first turn, your second turn, kind of like where you should be going at every single time, and an in-depth matchup guide, looking at different strategies you should do for your best matchup all the way to the worst one, and how you should approach every single matchup moving forward. So without further ado, let's jump in to talk about how you should be playing Charizard Dusknoir. So, as we know, Charizard EX has been around for about a year now and has two amazing things going for us. Infernal Rain, which has the amazing ability which you set up multiple of your attackers, and Burning Darkness, one of the best attacks in the game. 180 damage and 30 more for each prize card your opponent has taken. So, what exactly makes Dusknoir and Dusclops really optimal for Charizard strategy? Well, they have the amazing Curse Blast ability, which makes sure you get to knock yourself out and you get to put some damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon. This is incredibly powerful because it helps fuel that Burning Darkness. Because you're knocking out them, your opponent is taking an additional prize card. So you're already fueling that 30 more damage for Burning Darkness. So already hitting these big numbers. Plus, you spread some damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon, whether it be taking additional prize cards or helping you set up an attack. Defiance Band becomes even stronger in Charizard EX because always in the early game, especially on your second turn of the game, you're always going to be a bit behind because you've already got KO'd with the likes of Dusclops and Dusknoir. So you can activate Defiance Band, making sure that if you put the damage counters on the active Pokemon, Burning Darkness is doing 290 damage if you put with Dusclops, which is incredibly powerful. So that's quite a lot how we get this combo pieces set up. We have Pidgeot EX and Arvin. Pidgeot EX has the amazing quick search ability, which is search deck for any card you want and pop it into your hand. Best thing is, you don't even need to reveal that to your opponent. And Arvin is the strongest supporter, especially for Charizard Pidgeot. You get a search deck for a tool card and an item card and then pop them into your hand. The action card could be anything, your searchable stuff like Buddy Buddy Puffin, Ultra Ball, Nest Ball, or even like some Rare Candy and Unfair Stamp, which really help you with your own strategy. And the tool card, it gets you a Defiance Band, but also that key Forest Seal Stone. You're always going to have a Rotom or even a Luminion on the bench. So having this, being able to use that Star Alchemy whenever is really, really powerful. Goes with that additional combo pieces. Why I love about Unfair Stamp in the likes of Charizard EX, because if one of your guys gets knocked out during your opponent's last turn, you get to really helpfully disrupt them. You have other really good key cards like Pidgeot EX and the Pheasantipity to really help draw into multiple ones of your combo pieces. Please also note you can only play Unfair Stamp if one of your guys was knocked out during your opponent's last turn. You can't use it if you've KO'd likes of your Dusclops and Dusknoir during your strategy. So there is a lot of combo pieces going with Charizard EX. That's why Pidgeot EX becomes even stronger, and always you have to optimize getting it out as early as possible, even before you get a Charizard EX. So let's have an in-depth guide about some of the new cards which really made Charizard EX one of the strongest card decks. So we have Dusclops, that Curse Blast ability, but instead you get to knock this out and put 5 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon. This is incredibly strong. Another thing you need to remember, it is not like Lost Mine. It's not like you're spreading 5 damage counters anywhere. No, you're just putting 5 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon. Now, if that's the active spot, this can make Charizard hit 290 damage turn 2, the 50 from the ability, the 30 from the prize card being taken, and the 30 from Defiance Band. This is incredibly powerful. If not, that's just 50 less damage. So you're doing 240 damage, which is so powerful. Even that going second is very, very powerful on your second turn of the game. Now, it's also very good because you can KO the optimal Pidgey. You'll get rid of the 50 HP call for family, which is really strong, or the likes of Clefper. So you can use that to take additional prize cards as well, or help set up so the Charizard can do these big numbers in the late game. But the key guy and the big strategy is the likes of Dusknoir. That Curse Bar is now putting 13 damage counters at one of your opponent's Pokemon. This is so powerful. Again, it's not like Lost Mine. You're not spreading, you're just putting 13 damage counters on anything. It is such a great late game cleaner. You can have a setup KO with the likes of the Burning Darkness and then instantly get that KO with the likes of a Curse Blast in the late game. Or you can KO likes of Mimikyu, Bibarel, Radiant Greninja, and other really key stage 1 and setup Pokemon on your opponent's side of the board. It's a way for you to kind of have it out to stall. So kind of like KOing likes of Mimikyu, so they can't Mimikyu trap you and not just utilizing the likes of a Radiant Zard. So that's another really good key thing for strategy, but why Dusknoir is so powerful. Yes, you might have to waste one of your rare candies, but doing 13 damage counters, potentially taking an additional prize card, sometimes even 2 if it's helping cleaning up, is so powerful. Plus, you can even when you take a KO during your turn, you still have your attack. So this is what makes them Dusknoir much stronger in the likes of a single prize sort of matchup you might be going against, or even a stage 2 big EX deck. But we also have another good key card, Serendipity EX, with that Take Advantage ability, which once during your turn, if one of your Pokemon was knocked out during your opponent's last turn, you get to draw 3 cards, but you can only use one of this turn per turn. Now, this is amazing because it's a brilliant draw factor, but it also helps you learn how to sequence. You can draw this whenever during your turn, as it doesn't specify at the start of your turn, in the middle of a turn, at the end of a turn. You can draw this whenever, and this really makes you get your combo pieces before you have to use a Pidgeot. Like I mentioned before, you can see 3 additional cards, so that's very, very powerful. And you might draw into the combo pieces you might really require from the likes of that instead of searching for the Pidgeot, and then your Pidgeot can search your deck for a card which will help benefit you in the late game, or additional card which you really need just to kind of execute the strategy. You could draw into the Charizard with Serendipity, and then get the rare candy of the Pidgeot. It's so powerful and so strong, and really can make the likes of Charizard much more a bigger threat. Yes, you have lots of setup Pokemon, but all these setup Pokemon really make Charizard one of the strongest decks right now in the format. So why is Dusknoir and Dusclops so powerful? Well, they activate the likes of Counter Catcher and Roxanne. Making sure you can activate Counter Catcher, especially on your second turn of the game, is so powerful. Sometimes your opponent may not take a prize card, but if you just use a Dusclops, KO one of KO it, and then potentially spread some damage counters, you can Counter Catcher to bring up likes of a Rotom if they have a single prize board state. You can activate Roxanne if your opponent's taken 2 prize cards, use a Dusclops or Dusknoir, make them get to 3, then Roxanne them. So they're also having a lot less cards to work around with, and then you get additional more cards, which is so much stronger. It helps get the setup KOs, so it makes you sure you can set up some big sort of knockouts for Charizard to go in the late game, or potentially take an additional card during your a KO during your turn. So that's already another one. Very, very powerful. See additional card as well. Taking multiple prize turns can make Charizard go from potentially just taking a 1 prize KO to potentially even 2 or 3 prizes during a turn, which is so powerful. Like I said, it gets around the likes of Mimikyu, so your stall matchup is much stronger. And because you're KOing the likes of your Dusclops and Dusknoir, your opponent's taking more prize cards. Obviously, it's fueling the attack costs, making sure your Charizard's hitting more numbers, but also it's reducing the cost of your Radiant Charizard. So that is another very, very key strategy about why this deck is so powerful for the likes of Charizard Dusknoir. It is made for this one. You're dealing more damage from like your Charizard EX and requiring less energy to your Radiant Charizard. They are a match made in heaven. So, how exactly should be playing Charizard EX? Turn 1, you always want to prioritize getting your Rotom and Pidgeys out first before you get your Charmanders. You might go, but why is this, Charlie? Well, you want to get the Rotom out because you want to see that 2 additional more cards with the ability of Rotom, which is so, so powerful. And you want to get the Pidgeys out because it's such a big, heavy, reliant combo deck. You've got so many different pieces going for it. You need to get your Dusknoir pieces. You need to get your Charizard pieces. You might potentially need to get your destructive cards like Iono or like some Unfair Stamp. So there are lots of things going for Charizard. So really prioritizing likes of the Pidgey and Rotom beforehand, you can afford to go 1 or 2 prize cards behind, and then Charizard can have this big clean sweep in the late game. Turn 2, you always want to get your Pidgeot out before you get Charizard. You always want to get this one out, and you might go, but why is that, Charlie? Well, Pidgeot EX can get any one card you want to have. If you can just prioritize and have a Charizard EX right in the actual spot, but no Pidgeot, if your opponent Ionos you, or sometimes even if you're so much ahead, a Roxanne or Unfair Stamp, you might potentially not draw into anything. And this is why Pidgeot is so powerful, because you need to have that inbuilt draw factor to try and get your combo pieces going. Turn 3, you want to be starting, you want a really big swinging with Zard, potentially even get your Dusknoir line ready to get additional board prize cards. And pretty much afterwards, turn 4 onwards, you want to keep the attacks and disruptive going. Get multiple prizes with the likes of Dusknoir and Radiant Charizard, of course, for that prize trade. You don't want the opponent to take additional like 2-2-2. You want them to go 2-2-1-2. That's very, very much a very disruptive thing about this one. Yes, obviously, you're giving your additional board prize card like of Dusknoir, so that means you don't need to have that many attackers out in the field. So that's definitely something, again, to really think about, and that's why Charizard deck is such a powerful attacker in the game. So why on earth should you be playing Charizard EX? I talked quite a lot about how powerful Dusknoir is. Well, the spreading damage counters really helps fix that maths issue. Having that Burning Darkness, you pretty much make sure that you can get that big 2 prize KO, especially going on your second turn of the game, which is really, really powerful. It makes for a good disruption deck. Having Counter Catcher, having Roxanne, having like some Unfair Stamp, and also making sure you're taking additional more prize card. You can Iono them or even Roxanne them, and they have to take less cards than they once had because you're forcing them to take some prize cards. So that's really good disruptive capability for you. It is still one of the best attackers in the game right now. Burning Darkness is so powerful. Pretty much when your opponent takes all the way until they've got 1 prize card left, you're doing 300 damage, which is so powerful for 2 energies with having 330 HP. And Pidgeot is such a good card to get on any of your combo pieces you really do require. So that's a lot of good strengths about why Charizard and Pidgeot is such a good, powerful powerhouse. And this Dusknoir really helps fix all that math issues and makes it that more disruptive deck. But it does have some more weakness. It is now a lot more of a combo deck. If you don't get Pidgeot out turn 2, you could potentially fall behind so badly that you're not going to be keeping up in the game. So that's definitely something to be a bit more of a worry about. Cornerstone Ogerpon with Penny Loop is such a big threat. The only way how you can do any damage to it is from the likes of Charmanders or even the likes of a 2 Dusknoir to get a big KO on this one. They could just use 1 Penny Loop and all of a sudden you're just instantly out of the game. That's a big weakness for the deck right now. You still don't have a big answer for likes of the Cornerstone Ogerpon. TM Devo definitely forces you to play a lot more stage 1, so that's why you play a high count of the likes of Charmeleon, but because you've got to constantly be very much scared of a TM Devo. Charizard also plays likes of this, and also we are in a very much a big heavy evolution format again. No, we've said goodbye to the big a basic Pokemon like a Raging Bolt, but that's Roaming, but they are still around, but they've gone back to return the likes of Charizard and likes of Chien-Pao and Gardevoir. So having TM Evo and having an answer for this one, it's definitely become a much more a bigger threat right now in the game, and not being prepared for the mirror. That is a big weakness about Charizard right now. The person who really most optimal in the Charizard mirror is always going to come out on top. It's a lot more combo pieces. You're always prioritizing your board setup over the likes of prizes in the mirror. And if you don't come into that prepared, this is definitely going to be a big struggle. Luckily in this video, I'm going to be talking all about that later on. So let's look exactly on my deck list, where I'm kind of situated right now with Charizard DX. So I play a 4-2-3 line of Charizard, being a 3-1 split of the Charmanders with a 70 HP one. This protects you from both the likes of Dragapult, but also I think they're very good attacking options as well. We aren't playing a 60 HP one, which obviously has that additional damage for the 1 energy, which potentially could see a good inclusion as well. But I've opted to kind of go with the 70 HP one, the 40 damage for 3 energies, which I think is a very good cleaner in likes of Gardevoir, as well as also helps you in likes of being TM Devoed. 2 Charmeleons, because you don't want to be, you always want to have a Charizard ready to go straight away. You don't want to rely on always having a rare candy in play, so having more copies of Charmeleon I think is a much stronger strategy, and you're always going to get it out, at least 1 of 2 of them out turn 2, which I'm a big fan. And obviously 3 Charizard, you don't need to have 4, and you always need to have enough attackers, so that's why I've gone with the likes of 3. 1 copy of the Radiant Charizard because I think it's just one of the best attackers as well. Like I mentioned before, your Dusknoir helps you reduce the cost of this one, so effectively you could be attacking this as early as turn 2, maybe even turn 3, and not relying on wasting 5 energies. We've gone for a 202 line of Pidgeot, and you can notice I'm not playing the 50 HP one. I'm going for the 60. I'm expecting there to be a lot of mirror at the World Championships, and I don't want to give your opponent any sort of easy prize card from the likes of Dusclops. Take an additional prize card during your turn, which is very scary, and effectively they can do additional more damage as well. So that's why I've gone for the likes of the potentially the worst version of the 60 HP one. Obviously, I mentioned so much about how powerful Pidgeot EX. It's such a strong strategy for Charizard. You really need to prioritize against out turn 2. This is definitely, you should always get Pidgeot before Charizard. I'm going to drill this into your head right now. It helps you get your combo pieces. Now, I've gone for a 2-1-1 line of Dusknoir. As you've been watching lots of my looking ahead videos, I've kind of talked about a 1-1-1, a 2-1-2, and so many different versions about where we've seen Dusknoir kind of fit with Charizard. Me personally, I think 2-1-1 is so powerful. Potentially on any turn of the game, getting 1 Dusclops and a Dusknoir out during your turn is so powerful. Effectively, you're doing 18 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon, 1 turn in the game. So you're KOing the likes of a Luminion and the likes of a Mew EX. So taking 2 prize cards that way. Yes, you are giving 2 prizes, but your suddenly opponent's taking additional 2 prizes. So Burning Dance is going to pretty much get a KO on nearly every single thing in the game. So that's definitely a really good strategy. Having likes of Super Rod, you can effectively utilize it and get another Dusclops out to help clean up in the late game, which is another really good strategy. Our support Pokemon likes of Lumineon, Rotom, Serendipity, and Manaphy. Lumineon and Rotom are very good. Lumineon gets you your Arven, but also any support you might potentially need, but also a really good Forest Steel Zone target. Rotom is one of the best sort of ones you want to have for that instant charge ability, drawing 3 cards and obviously ending your turn. This is really good to draw into the combo pieces you really require. Going 4 cards deep instead of 1 more card deep from the draw is from going second is so powerful. Yes, it does force your opponent to mainly use their Iono, but if they don't, you're going to have such a good setup. Like so, Serendipity, I'm a big fan of this one. I mentioned before, you can just draw 3 cards whenever you like during your turn if one of your Pokemon's knocked out during your opponent's turn, which I think is so powerful, and draw into all those combo pieces, and obviously 1 copy of Manaphy as well to protect from likes of Radiant Greninja, or even likes of Kyurem in Regidrago, which I think could definitely be a big threat to you. Ice pick of choice is Unfair Stamp. Over likes of Legacy Energy and Maximum Belt, or even Hero Escape, I think Unversed really adds that really good disruptive capability, but what makes Charizard so powerful. Pretty much forcing your opponent to go to 2 cards. You can activate Counter Catcher, get rid of all their key threats. It's so powerful, and we can force your opponent out of the game. Play one Power Pad. We play this over likes of a Team ESL because obviously we want to utilize all of our supporters. We have some very key tech cards as well, so we want to like utilize where I can. Power Pad. Yes, I know it can kind of get rid of by likes of Erie and Misfortune Sisters, but I think it's still a very good inclusion nevertheless. One last vacuum because lots of other decks play likes of Bravery Charms to removing this one. It also can make your Gardevoir matchup even better. Removing the likes of a Drifloon with a Lost Vacuum, and then you've also got Dusknoir or Dusknoir to get the prize card that way, and also have Counter Catcher potentially for to KO the likes of a Gardevoir. It is a very, very scary strategy and make your Gardevoir matchup even stronger. 2 Counter Catcher for a really good gusting effect. I mentioned before, you're always going to potentially be behind in prizes because of how good Dusknoir is. Try and take your opponent taking that additional prize card. So it's already an instant gusting, which is very searchable with the likes of Arven. 2 Super to recover your Dusknoir attackers and obviously your very 6 energies. And then obviously your searching cards are 2 Nest Ball, 3 Buddy Puffin, and 4 Ultra Ball. I really like this strategy. I think it's really key. I would love to have a 4 Buddy Puffin to try and get your optimal setup, but honestly, with the strategy, it hasn't really failed me yet. 4 copies of Rare Candy because you're really in this one. We're seeing here, we are playing 6 stage 2 Pokemon, so you want to kind of get them out as quick as possible, and this is definitely the best way forward this one. Supporters, we have 2 really interesting techs, one Erie and Professor Cherry's Scenario. Erie, I think, is so powerful in Charizard. You're already having that disruptive capability with the Dusclops, Dusknoir, and Unfair Stamp, but removing any of these key item cards can make your Chien-Pao matchup to a worse matchup to potentially just a little bit better, so definitely something to be considered. And Professor Cherry's Scenario helps you pick up that very heavily damaged likes of Charizard, but also removes any of your liabilities. Versatility, Rotom, Luminium, even the likes of Clap Stadium can really help you activate that strategy. You want to not have that many liabilities out in play and want to have mainly a single prize board state and maybe potentially a Charizard EX because you want your opponent to take these big one-hit KOs if they need to, but you want to also protect your guys as much as possible. 2 Bosses Orders for Gusting, 2 Ionos for that disrupt capability. Would love to have an additional more one, but honestly the space is very difficult, but I think it's a very good setup card in the early game, and that 3 copies of Arven. This is one thing I would love to have a 4th copy. This could go over the likes of an Erie, which is something which potentially you could be playing, but I really am a big fan of the 3 Arven. I haven't really been let down with this one. You still always gain a turn 2 Pidgeot and Charizard, I've always found, so it's definitely a good strategy. Like I mentioned before, Collapse here and remove the likes of that Luminion and Rotom V, so you can not giving your opponent any additional prize card. Tool cards are that really key to Defiance Band and Forest also, and 6 energies. So this is exactly my Charizard EX list. I'm a big fan about how the strategy is kind of go, and I've done a ton of testing with this one. So this is definitely the list that I've been using a lot in my testing and was coming across very, very well. So let's talk about some of the inclusions that didn't exactly make it. So let's talk about Legacy Energy, and people have been playing Legacy Energy in Charizard. It really helps that prize rate. Forcing your Charizard to become a single prize Pokemon is very, very scary for your opponent to deal with. It also helps you with the likes of the combos with the likes of your Dusclops and Dusknoir. You're always taking additional prize card that way, your opponent is. So why not play a Legacy Energy and forcing your Charizard to become like the other part of that 2 prizer? So I do really like that strategy, but it can easily be removed from the likes of Enhanced Hammer or even Temple of Sinnoh. These cards aren't seen as much play as Lugia isn't as strong as it once was, but if people clock on that people are going to be playing Legacy Energy in their Charizard, they just need to add 1 copy of Enhanced Hammer in this one, an easy search out from the likes of Arven, or even draw into the combo pieces with Pheasantipity or even Pidgeot EX. The other aspect which you could potentially play is Maximum Belt, and I had some great success with it. It's really great in the mirror because you can have additional 50 more damage counters, so lots of spreading, potentially get a big prize KO turn 2, which is very, very scary for anything to deal with. Obviously very searchable with Arven, but one thing I generally found, which is a bit of a disappointment with Maximum Belt, is Lost Vacuum is far too common in lots of decks, and Dusknoir basically does this but better. You can do a Dusknoir plus max Defiance Bolt, and you're doing 80 damage instead of 50 damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. So that's definitely something to be a lot more considerate about. It's very easy to remove, even like the jamming towers and lots of decks if they can't think of some stadium card to put it in place. So definitely I wouldn't be playing Maximum Belt and putting that in a hurry. Definitely one of the worst ones to play, but still something really good to consider nevertheless. Now, I think this Pidgey is one thing I would love to put in. The 50 HP call for family. Obviously, it's amazing to get that set up. You do obviously want to use Instant Charge with Rotom, but if you can't do this one, call for family, search your deck, fill up the board as much as possible. It's much better in that way. You want to have a really good board state going forward too, but it has got far too low HP and can easily be KO'd likes of Dusclops. And it's also very weak and bad against Demira, Dragapult, Sableye, and even Monkey Dory as well, because they have very low HP. It can instantly be KO'd from likes of Dragapult and Sableye. Monkey Dory can easily spread some damage counters and take a KO that way. And obviously in the mirror as well can be very, very difficult having this low HP because of the likes of that Dusclops. Definitely something to be a bit concerned about over this, the 50 HP over the 60. Even a 1-1 split could be a good thing if you are generally that scared of a mirror and Dusclops. Go for the 60 HP one better. But if you value your setup, 50 HP one is obviously much more of an optimal choice. Similar thing can be said about Cleffa. Cleffa I really like because it's obviously one of the best cards in the early game. Drawing 2, you have 7 cards in hand is so powerful, and obviously it's Buddy Puff and searchable. Plus, it's a great pivot. It's another free retreat Pokemon, like think of the likes of Pidgeot EX. But again, like I mentioned, it is very, very weak to mirror, and obviously Monkey Dory. Monkey Dory can just transfer the damage counters, and they're taking a prize card that way, which is very, very scary. And it can only really remove it from likes of a Churro or a Collapse, and you don't really want to sacrifice your Churro very much early on just to remove a 30 HP Pokemon. So again, something to be considered about. These are some very good key setup cards, but you kind of like noticing the trend is how scared I really am about how going into mirror match, going into other sort of Dusclops and Dusknoir matchups. This can become much more of a threat. Bibarel, I think, is a very good one. Thinking about it, having a Bibarel, having a Pidgeot, having Serendipity, it equals all of your combo cards. You're seeing so many cards. Potentially, if you have a draw into 5 cards, then you have Serendipity. That's initial 8. Plus the Pidgeot, that's 9 cards you're seeing nearly every single turn if one of you guys gets knocked out, if you're drawing every single thing, which is so powerful for Bibarel, which I think is a very good combo style deck for this deck. Now, obviously, it's great against TM Devo. Obviously, if they TM Devo it, it goes straight to your hand. You can instantly play it down. But obviously, your hand could be a bit clogged with the Pidgeots, like the Charizard. But it can help you draw it into your board. But one thing which is very key, and I've noticed in this matchup, especially in my testing, you're taking up very key and bench spaces having this Bibarel. You want to have at least like 1 or 2 Charizards down and play, maybe even a third if you've got space. You want to have space for the likes of your Pidgeot. You want to have space for your Dusclops. You may even want space for Manaphy or Rotom. And then you have Bibarel, and then you have other stuff as well. There, it keeps on piling up and up and up. And I've noticed in my testing, Bibarel has come a lot more handy right now in the format without Dusclops, but currently in a format where we are really focusing on Dusclops, I just think Bibarel is not as strong right now, and it can easily be KO from the likes of a Dusknoir. Enhanced Hammer, I've mentioned it's so good against Legacy Energy. Removing that, so making sure against if you're KOing the likes of an Iron Hand or even likes in the mirror match, you're taking that 2 prize instead of 1, which is obviously much better. It's great against Lugia and obviously sometimes against Mirror, but it's sometimes not needed enough time. Social Energy isn't as strong as it once was. It's not in the format where like DCEs were nearly in every single deck, so Enhanced Hammer was so key in the strategy. Lugia isn't the powerhouse it once was. It's a shadow of its former self. So Enhanced Hammer I could see not as strong. It is Arven searchable, so again that's another good key strategy for it. But right now I say Enhanced Hammer may not be as powerful, but if you are scared of Legacy Energy, or if you're scared of DTE and other sort of decks as well, potentially add this as well. It also removes likes of Up and Neo Energy, so makes your Dragapult a little bit better. Number 1 is Temple of Sinnoh. Does exactly the same thing. Stops likes of Legacy Energy and DTE, which is obviously a big sort of thing as well. But also it's great against Lugia. Any Lugia or special energy checks, like I mentioned before, aren't as strong for Worlds right now, so potentially these 2 cards won't be needed, but also a good sort of thing to test against. If you are expecting lots of Lugia or in your testing area, you see a lot of special energy, chucking these in doesn't really hurt at all with your strategy. Another one is Artisan is such a great stadium card. When I'm ever playing against Gardevoir or any other deck which really utilizes Artisan, it is so powerful. It gets you your Charmanders, your Pidgeys, your Duskulls, which I really, really like against multiple things in your setup. You can stop from likes of playing Buddy by Poffin, or even a Nestball can get to search out with this stadium. It's obviously a good stadium bounce after Collapse, so it's really, really powerful as well. If you get your Collapsed out, you want to kind of like remove your guys, then potentially next turn you can Artisan and bring out another fresh one like that Duskull, which you potentially just got a KO from last turn. But more decks are playing this, so it's in a lot of other archetypes, so you potentially don't need it as much because you can obviously kind of like utilize your opponent's one as well. This was used strategy quite a few years ago, so potentially that's exactly a good reason why not to play Artisan. And Technical Machine Devolution. This is great in the mirror and against other evolving decks. It can make your Chien-Pao matchup to a worse matchup to an okay matchup. It can instantly win sometimes a mirror match. You can take additional prize cards out with the spreading damage counters from the likes of Dusclops and Dusknoir. You're going to be spreading a lot of damage counters everywhere, so potentially as TM Devo play plus loads of spraying damage counters plus some of the burning darkness attacks, you can effectively take 2, sometimes even 4 prize cards, which is so powerful. There is literally no downside to playing this one. For me personally, it will be in the list, but I have no space for TM Devo. If I did, I would be adding it in an absolute heartbeat. It is so powerful and so good for the strategy about where Charizard Dusknoir is really heading. So let's look at the ideal board state on your first turn of the game, and this personally is the best way to go around it. You want to have 3 Charmanders, 1 Pidgey, 1 Dusclops, and a Rotom to end the turn. There's a few other key cards you potentially would add, like a Manaphy, additional Pidgey if you are against likes of a Dragapult or a Regidrago. You want to have that protection space, so having additional Pidgeys is very much a key strategy going forward. I really like having a Charmander in the active spot, pure on the basis like, yes, it could KO us, but you still have 2 Charmanders protected on the bench. If you are against likes of a Chien-Pao or likes of Regidrago, you want to be punching the Manaphy straight away, and this could effectively remove the likes of a Charmander, which could be a very good strategy. And definitely, if you want to go on your second turn, you want to be having this board state, and I can't emphasize how powerful this board state is. Having Charizard in the active spot with all your energies on this one, potentially having another additional energy on the Charmeleon and the Charmander as well, so that only 1 energy away to go is so strong. As you're playing 2 copies of Charmeleon, having one of these down is not very difficult to get into. You'll be drawing into this quite a lot of cards as well. The Rotom, with any of your Ionos or any of your key pieces you potentially need from your Pidgeot X is so good. Having a Dusclops, a threat of that as well, is so scary. You could pretty much go KO with Dusclops and then bench down another Pokemon. You could bench your Manaphy down so you can kind of like go through that way. You could bench another Charmander, wouldn't recommend it, or even a Pidgey to protect your Pidgeot EX, or even a Pheasantipity for drawing in the later turn. It is so versatile right now about how powerful it really is. Again, like I mentioned before, go for Pidgeot EX and then go for Charizard. If you have a Rotom on the bench, you have Forest Hill Stone, you have Arvin, you have Pidgeot EX. There are so many good key cards to draw into to make sure you can always get the Charizard EX as well. So that's another really good strategy for this deck. Now, let's look at everyone's favorite thing, the matchup guide. Looking at the favored, the even to the unfavored. I think it's got a pretty good spread around it. Definitely the most favored ones are likes of Gardevoir, Tealmaster Ogerpon with Raging Bolt, Lost Tina, Gholdengo, the Ancient Box, and Miraridon EX. And some of the even decks are Lost Box, Dragapult, Lugia, and that Pecharunt, that new Donkey style deck. And definitely the unfavored ones from our testing has been Chien-Pao, Regidrago, and Control. No surprise here with the Control, because Charizard has an absolutely terrible matchup. So right now, I'm going to talk to you about the in-depth strategy about how I really should execute every single matchup going into this forward. If you enjoyed this video so far, please remember to like and subscribe. I love doing these mastering videos, and you guys love them too. Really does help support the channel. And again, thank you so much for the support right now. Let's jump right into the favored matchups. Let's look at Gardevoir EX. And Gardevoir EX, obviously it's a very, very scary deck, but the things to do against this one is target Gardevoir and Curlies on the bench. Having likes of Dusclops and Dusknoir, you can take additional prize cards that way, which is so powerful. Using Dusknoir to reduce Mimikyu, make sure it's very good strategies. They're not going to be having the TM Devo play, or even the likes of the Mimikyu store and spreading some damage counters, which could be very, very scary. Dusclops on certain Pokemon, make sure they can't Psychic Embrace into them. So having a Dusclops on the likes of a Curlier, putting that 5 damage counters on this one, effectively having only 30 HP left, they can only Psychic Embrace to it once. And then they have to hopefully have an NG in their hand to try and get their retreat option, which again is very, very key thing. Keep track of the distractive cards. They obviously play high counts of Iono. They obviously play unfair stamp at time. They also might play the likes of any of these key distractive cards like Counter Catcher. Keep an eye on this one, because you don't want to really kind of like you draw into this one, and that really helps you in the matchup. And one of the best things about what Dusknoir does, it unlocks a 4 prize turn. You can Lost Vacuum a Drifloon or Screamtail, so take a prize card that way. You can Curse Blast to KO the likes of a Curly on the bench, or even a very low HP Pokemon, so you're taking a prize card that way. And then you can Counter Capture or boss a Gardevoir EX and take 2 prizes that way. It is so scary what this deck can kind of do. And out of nowhere, you can, because obviously they're going to be much of a single prize board state, you can have this big one-hit KO straight away, take 4 prize cards, effectively win in that single turn, which is so scary, and potentially removing nearly all of your opponent's Gardevoirs out in play is very, very strong. But with all that being said, even though it's very favorable, there are a few things we should be watching out for with Gardevoir. First, maybe touching off the abilities in the active. So if you have a Charizard EX and you go, oh, evolve into someone, use Infernal Rain, it's like, nah, if there's a Fluttermane in the active slot, it cannot use its abilities. So another thing to really keep strategy, only have really some key cards and only put the Pokemon in the active spot when you're ready to do the attacking. Trapping somebody active with Screamtail and bench sniping your Pokemon is very, very scary. Not having the Manaphy out could, again, really ruin your strategy. So that's something to really be considerate about. And obviously, Mimikyu stall with TM Devo is very scary. Some Gardevoir lists, which I know I've been testing a lot with Justin, who's helped a ton with his video as well. So please make sure to check him out on Twitter. He's doing very well. And as a huge master on Gardevoir EX and Charizard as well. One of the big strategies which I can kind of lose with is like the Mimikyu stall with the likes of TM Devo. Yes, obviously Gardevoir can get these big one-hit KOs now with the likes of Monkey Dory, but having the Mimikyu stall with TM Devo could really help hinder you in that process. They could spread loads of damage counter to this one, and then they can even KO the likes of the Charmeleons after they've been TM Devo. So something to be bear in mind and consider about with Gardevoir EX. Another good strategy I think is very good is Raging Bolt Ogerpon. And this is when Radiant Charizard is such a great attacker. Radiant Charizard with the likes of a Defiance Band is doing 280 damage. Just a little bit short if they do play the likes of a Bravery Charm, but have the likes of Dusclops and Dusknoir, you can help fix that mass problem. Obviously, Dusclop, the active Raging Bolt can really help get the big KOs. Like I mentioned before, obviously if they play Charms and you get the Defiance Spell plus you also damage counters on there, you're basically doing 290 damage, which is basically the one KO you might really require. Only really put Charizard EX in play if you are going to get the knockout. I really do not like having one of these out in play before you get the KO. Why is that? Because they can instantly target that one. Yes, I know they're going to be mainly targeting likes of the Dusclops or sometimes even like some Pidgeot, so really forcing you to really attack with like some Charizard. It's very scary for you to deal with. Another thing to watch out for, if any of the deck does play the Ancient Booster Capture Energy, their HP is 300. Not the 290, which is easy to KO, so 300. So again, think of that. How is that going to impact your strategy when you're going to put the damage counters? If they're potentially always going to be attacking if they go second, you could effectively go, okay, I can use the Dusclops, use the Fight Spell, and now I've hit over 300 damage. So again, something that to think about when you go into the game as well. They will target your, like I mentioned before, your Dusclops and Pidgeots. Really protect them as much as you can. I would say this is a pretty good matchup because you're always going to go a 2-2-2. They don't really run any sort of single price attacking options. Maybe a Flutter Mane, maybe that Sandy Shocks really help go around like some Mimikyu. So again, really think of it like that. So when you think about they're only really a 2-2-2 sort of matchup, it's very easy for you to kind of go around this one. And effectively, that Dusclops and Dusknoir can really skew with their price trades. So again, that's another good thing going for the Dusknoir. Now, I think this is a good matchup against Lostina. If you Dusclops and the active Giratina for the KO, that's very strong. But or check out Radiant Charizard with a Defiance Band, we're doing 280 damage. So that's very powerful and very scary for anything to really deal with. So that's one thing I love about this Lost Zone deck. You're always going to be targeting these big two-prize attacking options, but you can utilize likes of Dusknoir to take a multi-prize turns to KO the likes of Sableye, the Cramorants, the Comfies, plus also gain the KO likes of about blanking on this one, Giratina is very strong. An Unfair Stamp is a very key card. Mainly they might play maybe one Roxanne, maybe an Iono potentially, but having like this going down to 2 cards, potentially removing 2 or 3 Comfies as well, it's very scary and potentially they can't really come back with this. So that's one thing I love about how disruptive you can be against Lostina. Another thing to watch out for is Roxanne Countercatcher Pidgeot equals disaster. They can Roxanne you going down to like 2 cards, plus also removing any of your searching things is really scary. They don't play likes of TM Devo, but because of how powerful Charizard is kind of becoming, they're removing likes of Blood Moon and Luna and adding back Iron Leaves. So again, something to be considered about. I'm very scared potentially having this big Iron Leaves to get these big one-hit KOs very easily. Yes, obviously you can respond to it with ease, but again, something to consider and very much worry about if you are scared about Lostina. Plus also they're going to be targeting your Duskulls. They have the good spread with Sableye. So again, and Greninja as well. So you always need to prioritize Manaphy. So again, things to consider about going to this matchup as well. But always kind of, like I mentioned, you're a big stage 2 Pokemon, going kind of KOing these big 2 prizes is the best way forward. Looking at Gholdengo EX has seen quite a lot of success, and Dusclops and Dusknoir the active really does help get some big KOs. If they're running 50 HP Gimmighoul, which ideally they shouldn't be now because of how powerful and how scary the likes of Dusclops and Dusknoir have become, you can target Dusclops and get that big KO that way, which is really key for the strategy. And obviously Radiant Charizard is such a good attacker for the prize rate. Now, one thing to watch out for with Gholdengo is only bench Manaphy when you see a Palkia. Some decks are playing the likes of Darkrai and the likes of Dusknoir, so something to be prepared of as well, so potentially overbenching certain things, because obviously you can reuse the likes of Rare Candy with the likes of the Darkrai's ability. is something to be considered about. So if they are going away from the likes of Palkia, you may not need the mana feed, but you might want to overbench some Pokemon to protect yourself. And they need 7 energies to KO you. If they are playing the Dusclops and Dusknoir, they need less energies. Effectively, they need 3 less energies if they Dusknoir you on the active, which is definitely a big scary thing to think about. But obviously you can play Dusclops and Dusknoir to help really get the big setup. Like I mentioned before, you can get these big one-hit KOs, 290 damage turned to with a Dusclops on the active spot with Defiance Band. Something, again, always to think about in the early game. So all you need to do is get over that last hurdle, and then you're absolutely smooth sailing with Charizard Dusknoir. Another good matchup is Ancient Box, and I played quite a bit of it over this past weekend at League, and honestly, I think it's very, very powerful. Dusclops, the active move of Ancient Boost Capture, does get you the big KO. Now, obviously, it does hit, you hit 280 damage, but if they've got a boost capture energy, they have 200 HP, so it's already 20 HP. Sure, so potentially get your opponent, force him to take a KO of likes of the Dusclops or Dusknoir, you can get instant KO straight away, which I think is a very good strategy for the deck. You have a lot of HP, so it's very difficult for them to deal with. But if you Dusknoir the likes of a Radiant Greninja or a Fluttermane, you can take additional prize card that way. So any time when a single prize deck can be made into a 2-prize turn, it just swings you so much into your favor. So getting that Dusknoir KO on likes of a Radiant Greninja or even a Fluttermane is so powerful and so strong. Or even just a Dusknoir and then a Dusclops. Yes, you are giving up 2 prize cards, but effectively you can remove all their threats in play. Obviously, have a single prize board state. You may want to have a Rotom as well, but maybe think about collapsing Stadium out earlier on if potentially they get the big KO. If they do attack, the turn 1 attack if they go second is obviously very scary. If they get the KO and they instantly instigate the prize trace, it could be very scary for you to try and catch up. So it's something to be considered about. And again, Fluttermane does shut off the abilities in the active. I would generally say this is much more of a favorable matchup. It isn't being seen as much, but you do play likes of Lost Vacuum, you do play Dusclops and Dusknoir and have multiple ways that way. Especially, again, you can do the Lost Vacuum in the active. You can then also do the Dusknoir on a Radiant Greninja and even attack the active Pokemon as well and take a 3-prize turn. So again, think about the odds, think about the outs, think about how much Pidgeot EX really does help strategize. You're mentioning, I'm seeing, talking about lots of combo. This is showing how powerful likes of Pidgeot EX really will become in the matchup. Another one is Miraridon, a deck which hasn't seen that much play, but I think could see quite a bit in the later game. Dusclops the active does help get the KO. Obviously, if you just get an instant KO, it does 210 damage. That's where Defiance Band become much more handy. But having a Dusclops or Dusknoir can really help get any of us set up. You can KO the likes of a Tatsugiri. You can KO the likes of a not Dusknoir, a likes of a Zapdos. So another thing to really consider with that Dusknoir does also remove likes of Radiant Greninja, as some decks are in fact going to be playing Rad Ninja. Lost Vacuum away their heavy batons. You do not want to have loads of their energies out in play. You do not want to Raichu play, but if they do have that out, it can be very, very scary. Obviously, cheer away all your heavily damaged Zards. You want to give them potentially a 3-prize turn likes of an Iron Hands if they can't get a big one-hit KO. So that's always something to be considered about. Always think they have the odds with that one. Another thing to watch out for, some decks do play double Zapdos. So double Zapdos on an Iron Hands will in fact make your Pidgeot a 3-prize Pokemon. So again, something pretty scary to think about. Obviously, Iron Hands is very scary, but having the Defiance, not Defiance, but Defiance Band plus also the likes of a Lost Vacuum can really swing that a little bit more in your favor. And obviously, one of the worst things is that keeping your energies out and play for that big Raichu attack in the late game. I would say Miraridon is still very much an easy matchup for you overall. They are always going to be a 2-2-2 sort of deck, and you always will have that sort of strategy. Dusclops and Dusknoir really does help you get the big one-hit KOs in the early game, so it's definitely something to really think about going into your strategy moving forward. Another one, let's look at the sort of even matchups. We're looking at Lost Box. And Lost Box is definitely a deck which could be much more of a threat, especially after one NAIC. This is a deck which you really want to set up your Pidgeot early on. Obviously, they're going to be spreading down around lots of damage cards and have these huge, big, scary attackers like Iron Hands, Roaring Moon, and even the likes of a Blood Moon Luna in the late game. So definitely use your Dusknoir to target, take some prize cards that way. Use your Dusknoir to potentially take an additional prize card as well. Use your Dusclops to help do some setup. It's very much a good sort of strategy for the deck. Understamp them in the late game is really good. They're going to play maybe one Roxanne in the deck, maybe even Iona potentially, but they're always going to have this big hand size for them to get all their combo pieces going. So if you get to have the likes of an Understamp, force them to take 2 cards, and then potentially taking additional prize cards that way, it's very scary for them to come back. And that's one thing what makes the deck so good is having that disruptive capability. But again, stuff to watch out for. Again, like I mentioned before, the Roxanne countercatcher, the Pidgeot is very scary, but also the early attacks of the likes of Roaring Moon and Blood Moon Luna, KOing the likes of a Charizard or even the likes of a the likes of your Pidgeot is very, very scary with a Blood Moon Luna. Now, good thing about Roy Moon, the only way how to get the KO is they put some damage counters on this one. So that's where Dusknoir and Dusknoir come in handy. Yes, you may give up a prize card, but you get to take two. So that's not too bad at all. And obviously, if they get the spreading lots of damage counters, that TM Devo play could be very, very scary for you to deal with at all in the late game. So again, something to consider out. I would say it's a pretty good matchup, but if it is a pure single prize deck, it's a bit more scary. If it's that Dusknoir one, that is definitely a Dusknoir one. That is definitely a lot more scarier than the likes of a two-price Pokemon deck, like likes of Blood Moon Luna and the likes of Iron Hands, which I think is going to be a lot more common, which you have a much better matchup because you instantly get some two prizes that way. Another one is Dragapult. I think Dragapult kind of is going from a bad matchup to a better matchup because of Dusknoir and Dusclops. Dusknoir early on the Dragapult is so good and pretty much can win you the games then and there. If you just Dusknoir on the active and Dragapult EX and then get your Burning Darkness attack, you're getting the KO that way. So that's very, very strong and can make the deck so much better. They're going to be target their Pidgeot. Even though you have your Pidgeot EX, they also have a Pidgeot EX. So if you target their one, and you can instantly get a KO that way, much easier than they can get a KO on yours because you have to get the setup they do. Another one is Unfair Snap and Churro them constantly. Pick up your heavily damaged Pokemon for that instant healing factor because they're only going to do 200 damage with a little bit of sniping potential. So if you then Churro up, then you can Unfair Stamp them, getting them to 2-card hand, getting rid of their Pidgeot EX. It is so scary for them to kind of like come back. So you're instantly going to have a much better game and always evolve into Charmeleon. Don't ever have a Charmander out and play because they can instantly be KO'd very easily on that spreading damage. So evolving into Charmeleon, making sure that they can't be affected by anything is so powerful. But a thing to watch out for is the likes of TM Devo. This is a deck which will be playing TM Devo. They're fine to have this lots of spreading away. That's why Churro is so powerful. You want to pick up your guys to force them to not really go into this TM Devo play. That's one really good strategy about where the second card come in handy. That's how Dusclops and Dusknoir is really good. Picking on any of their bench Pokemon can really force them to not really be spraying any of damage counters. You want to have your Pidgeot, you don't want to have any Pidgeys out and play for that long. They can instantly be a KO, whether it be the 50 HP one or the 60 HP one, with Phantom Dive spraying that damage counter to take additional prize cards that way. This is potentially going to be a matchup where you might want to have two Pidgeys out and play, always just and evolve them into Pidgeot because you want to have that protection. But again, going into the TM Devo, think about how will this really affect you in the play and will it be okay sacrificing 2 rare candies? And they can take a 2-prize turn. If potentially they can KO the likes of one of your Rotoms or Luminion, and then having it KO likes your Pidgey on the bench, it is very, very scary for you to kind of like come back from. So something to always consider about that. If they have a free prize turn, it's very devastating. If you have a free prize turn, it's very good for you. So think of it that way. Whoever gets the first 3 prizes is sometimes going to always be the winner. But you're a deck which has a good comeback potential. That's why I think Dragapult can kind of go from a bad matchup to a good one, purely about what Dusclops and Dust will really add to the deck. Another one is Lugia V-Star. I still think is a pretty even matchup. You can Dusclops early to get a big KO on the Lugia V, which is very, very strong. And obviously Dusknoir to KO the likes of a Cinccino on the bench, which I'm a big, big fan of this. If you are expecting to see a lot of Lugia, potentially add the likes of the likes of Enhanced Hammer or Temple of Sinnoh to really help you in that sort of matchup. Removing their Legacy Energies and play can be very scary. Legacy Energy on an Iron Hands obviously is the problem. Making Iron Hands a 1-prize Pokemon is very, very scary. But obviously Legacy Energy does require from damage counters, so effectively you can kind of go around with, damage. Effectively you can go around the likes of Dusclops and Dusknoir. I believe that would be the case, but obviously we're going to see you in the ruling. So again, something to really consider about this one, taking additional prize cards that sort of way. And obviously they are going to go back to the Cinccino build because that is going to be the best way. If Charizard is going to be the best deck, they're obviously going to take away the likes of the Drapions, but then go back to Cinccino's because they want to get the big one-hit KOs and not rely on these fun, cute plays from the likes of Weirdeer and Drapion and basic energies on Iron Hand. So again, something to consider about with Lugia. If they're going back to Cinccino, you can obviously Radiant Charizard and Dusclops and Dusknoir become a much stronger sort of partner because they're going to be getting additional prize cards during the turn. So when they attack with one Cinccino, you can effectively take 2 prizes instead of just 1 because you're attacking something on the bench. Again, something to consider about. Archeops, unfortunately, you can't get the KO of Dusknoir, but you can if you use Dusknoir and Dusclops at the same time. Another one is this new Pecharunt Donk deck, which I think could be very, very scary. Definitely something to do. If you are going first, please bench another Pokemon. Sometimes even 2. You want to have that protection as much as possible because top 6 subjugation with the stadium card in play, plus also any sort of Radiant Sneasel as well, you're doing these huge damage counters put in there, doing 7, maybe even 8, sometimes even 9 damage counters, which would be so scary for poison. Again, instant knocking out that way. Even if Ghost comes back on you, that's another big one-hit KO potential. Very, very scary. Definitely try and bench and take additional prize cards from the likes of Dusknoir and Dusknoir. This is where the deck can really shine. Making a single prize deck a 2-prize deck. This is what makes you really swing your matchup favor. And that's a big sort of thing. Always target the Brute Binder and Gust and Lost Vacuum. When we were doing our testing, we noticed that Brute Binder is what makes the deck tick. Obviously, if they have the Pecharunt EX, that's another sort of target as well for that switching effect. But definitely always focus on the Brute Binder, whether it be Lost Vacuum, whether it be Gusting, whether it be KO and likes of Dusknoir. Always kind of go that sort of strategy. Kind of like remove that and play because that's the scariest one. And one thing obviously to watch out for is if you go first, if they go first and they get the Donk, if you know you're going to be playing against one and you have 2 bench Pokemon, do it. Because if you don't, you're going to instantly lose that way and it can be very, very scary. And your World Championship series could in fact just be over then and there. If you have like a Rotom, even better, but always have that protection as well. And also they can definitely win by trapping something in the act as well. That's definitely a strategy how I won one time is that you can overextend the board. You could have your Churro in the discard pile with your power pad. You can have 5 energies out and play and then they can just go, right, I'm just going to gust this Pokemon and I know that you potentially may have prize energy or you can't have anything out and play and now I've won this way. That is a very realistic way about how this tech can in fact win. So definitely something to be considered about going forward. When should you be benching some Pokemon? When should you be evolving some stuff? And definitely a scary new deck to think about. Is it as a big of a threat as I think it could be? No, but definitely something you should definitely be knowing and testing against. So again, the key thing in here, if you're going first, bench some things. If they're going first, try and have a bench Pokemon and hope they pray that they do not get that Donk. Now let's look at the worst matchups. Chien-Pao, I think it's gone back to a bad matchup, and here is why. Some things you can really do is to get that Dusclops to kind of like remove the likes of a Chien-Pao to get that big one-hit KO is very strong. You want to target their Baxcaliburs. Again, nothing new here. Potentially, if you run TM Devo, that's a good strategy to kind of go around this one. Get the Pidgeot set up early, Dusknoir away, the Bibarel, and also some Eerie away, some key cards after an Unfair Stamp. Could be very scary. You can Unfair Stamp them, followed by an Eerie, and then they go, okay, now I've removed all your item cards. But I mentioned all these good sort of strategies you can kind of go around this one, and it can really work with Radiant Charizard to skew off the prize tree. But what makes it so scary? Radiant Greninja turn 2, removing 2 Charmanders. Removing your attackers from play is so scary. If you're going this one, you want to have a Manaphy, you want to have a Rotom set up for drawing, you potentially want to have a Dusclops, or even 2 Pidgeys. And if you have at least 2 Charmanders out in play, you always want to have 3. If they have 2, they always could be targeting those 2 Charmanders, removing that from play, and they're like, okay, I've got a turn to set up. You're not going to be attacking me, and then it's going to keep going that strategy. That's a very, very scary one. Okay, so we've responded to Greninja. Well, now we've got Iron Hands. They haven't used their Prime Catcher, or they potentially might use their Iron Bundle, or sometimes they might even go back to Counter Catcher and then KO one of your Pokemon on the bench, maybe your Pidgey, and helps them take 2 prize cards that way. It is very, very scary. And another scary thing is if they get the response KO. Obviously, and this is always the key strategy, if you are playing Chien-Pao, do not put down a 2-prize Pokemon until you can attack, because that's basically how Charizard EX does win this matchup. So to win the matchup, if they start off Chien-Pao and they can't get over the attack, or if they go second, they have Chien-Pao in the active and they can't move from the active spot, he pretty much is going to be winning that game with that Dusclops. So that's another good strategy. This is definitely a deck which you want to go first in and just win that sort of strategy. So again, something to really consider about, something to think about. That's one of the best ways to kind of play around this one. There is a lot to do against Chien-Pao, but it definitely is a big scary one. I think Eerie, Unfair Stamp, and Dusclops do add quite a lot to the deck, but it is still a very scary matchup, purely on the basis of how easy it is to get the turn 2 Ninja play. I played against lots with Justin, and the amount of times I got turn 2 Greninja against Charizard was ridiculous, and pretty much the easy way how to win the deck. So it's pretty much a big auto loss if that does happen. Another scary deck is Regidrago V-Star. Who would have thought that the year is 2024, we're still talking about Regidrago V-Star being an actual tier 1, maybe even a tier 2 deck, especially if we look at the Japanese results. Obviously, Dusclops and Defiance Band does get the big KO on the V-Star, so that's another good key thing going for this one. And obviously, you want to prioritize your Pidgeot out before you get Zard. Radiant Charizard is another good attacker. If you chuck that with a Defiance Band, you're doing that big one-hit KO potentiality on a Regidrago. But why is this deck so much of a threat right now? Kiram. Kieran pretty much means discard all energy, attack just one, and do 110 damage to 3 of your opponent's Pokemon. So that KOs your Pidgeys, that KOs your Charmanders, that KOs your Dusclops, that KOs lots of your setup Pokemon. Why is it? But what about Whip and Manaphy? They play Canceling Cologne and Gusting effects. And maybe even Prime Catcher or stuff like that. It is so scary to deal with. They might also play Dragapult Spread with TM Devo. So they're spraying lots of damage counters and then taking additional prize cards that way. They also have Raging Bolt for the big clean one-hit KO in the late game. Because they play Ogerpon, they could play Gardenia's Vigor, multiple ways to energy accelerate. Regidrago now is becoming much more a threat. Like it's been expanded since it's been released, it is now finally getting the good attackers it really does require. The Kyurem and Dragapult really does make this deck such a worse matchup for you. Yes, you can kind of like try and get the big one-hit KOs, maybe focus your some KOs on some Ogerpons or KOs the likes of your Regidragos all the time, but honestly, if they can get the Kyurem play out and just wipe out and get 3 prize cards that way, it is no coming back. That's why I think this deck is definitely one of the worst matchups, pure how scary Kyurem is, but then the other 2 attackers like Raging Bolt and Dragapult can really make it such a big threat. 280 HP is quite difficult to deal with. Like I mentioned before, we have lots of strategies to get to that bit magic number, but you have to get all the combo pieces, and effectively, if they are going to be scared about Kyurem and you price the mana fee, it's game over time, sadly. So that's definitely something to be a bit more considerate about and concerned in the future. Now let's look at 2 other decks, Control, and both very similar strategy. You kind of go around this one, but other cards you should also be worried about. One thing I really think about against the Pidgeot Control is you want to Dusclops KO their Pidgeys. They're always going to be playing the Call for Family one because they want to get the much setup as possible. If they are going to be protected to see a lot of Dusclops or Dusknoir, they're going to be going to the 60 HP one purely on the basis they want to protect themselves. Obviously, they get KO from likes of Dragapults, but you're not worried about this one. You're worried about what their HP is one. If they're playing the 50 and do Dusclops to kind of get the KO that way. You can also use a Dusknoir to KO the likes of a Pidgeot EX, as well as also Ursaluna. Help get the setup that way as well and get some gusting from that way. And one of the nice strategies about this one, you can effectively, in the early game, use that counter catcher play with the KO likes of Dusclops or Dusknoir to gust something key up, like that Rotom. So another thing which is very fun to play around as well. But you also need to double Dusknoir the Cornerstone Ogerpon for the KO. Like I mentioned before, the Penny Loop beforehand is a very scary thing about the deck, which is one of the things which can be scared about this one. These are why, because it's the only way to kind of go around this one. Again, things to watch out for is storing out your resources, Luxray and area away any of your key cards, and Radiant Charizard or Blood Moon Ursaluna in the late game for them. They obviously play these sort of things, so they can play a single prize Pokemon or even Blood Moon Ursaluna to get these big one-hit KOs. I talked about a few days ago about playing Pidgeot and Control with the likes of a Dusclops or Dusknoir. This can make the decks much, much stronger. It is quite scary. They do play Mimikyu, so again, you can Dusknoir, KO Vets 1, 2, have some strategies around, but they're going to burn your resources. They're going to play the Eries, they're going to play the Luxray, they're going to burn out nearly all of your key resources, so definitely something to be a lot more afraid of going into this sort of format. And BlockLax as well is quite scary. Now, I think this is definitely a much more of a worse matchup because you only really play the likes of 1 Churro and 1 Power Pad. If they Eerie, or even if they misfortune away your Power Pad, you only effectively have 2 switching outs, which can be very, very scary. Obviously, you can Dusknoir KO the likes of Mimikyu and Ogerpon to really help stay in the game. It's one of the only really good strategies. Only bench your attackers. Yes, you want to have that Pidgeot, and you could effectively use that as an attacking option, but they can Penny Loop. So that's another very, very scary thing. And they obviously have the fan to remove all your energies and put them potentially on likes of a Dusknoir, or probably not that, or the likes of a Pidgey, and having a Pidgey with 5 energies is very, very difficult. And if they trap the likes of a Charizard with no energies. And obviously, like I mentioned before, you need to double Dusknoir KO a Cornerstone Ogerpon just for a KO. And obviously, they are pennies, so that's never ever going to be the case. Removing their energies in play, the Flute Pokemon, they're using the Flute to put down some very, very scary Pokemon, like the likes of Manaphy or even Pheasantipity, which could just be sitting there and play and doing absolutely nothing, and earring away the rare candies. So this is very much a scary matchup. I would say Control is so difficult for you to deal with. There is lots of stuff which can kind of like go your way, but also your opponent has a lot of stuff to remove any of your key resources. As you are a combo deck, removing any of the combo pieces pretty much does effectively ruin your strategy. But a nice thing about this one, if you do play the likes of a Dusclops, and you get to KO the likes, you put some damage counters on a Snorlax, you can actually, because of the amount you can do from it, you can actually force your opponent to take a prize card. So you're always going to do over 200 damage. So you get the KO if they play a Bravery Charm, and obviously got the 5 damage counters on this one, you can effectively get the KO even if they have a Hero's Cape on. So that's another neat little nice play that you can go around with Charizard, which you couldn't before with the likes of Dusclops and Dusknoir. Now let's talk about one of the most key strategies of the game, the mirror match. And there is a lot of stuff going for this one. I played quite a bit of the mirror match, quite a bit. I understand it quite well. So let's call my thoughts and feelings about what you should do going into the mirror. Again, like I mentioned constantly throughout the video, prioritize Pidgeot EX before Charizard. You want to be having your board state set up instead of going for prizes. Think about your board state. Think about how you're going to win this game. Instead of going, I need to get Charizard and go prize, 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 or Dusclops, Dusknoir. As you're more of a combo deck, really focus about when you're going to be playing any of your key pieces. If you have like the Charizard EX, but no Pidgeot or no real good strategy around going to the game, or like when you should be using the Dusclops or Dusknoir, you've effectively lost. Even if you've got the first attack of the game, you want to have that setup. You want to have that Pidgeot. You want to have that first Serendipity. You want to know where your other backup attackers. You want to know when you could be using that Dusclops or Dusknoir. Get that out and then get the Charizard, then you're absolutely fine. Always think about unfair stamp and counter catch their Pidgeot EX when they get to 4 prizes. When you get to 4 prizes, use that to get the 4 prizes. It's very, very scary for a Charizard deck when they get to that, when one of them gets sort of 2 prize cards left, because you activate potentially likes of Counter Catch, you can activate likes of Defiance Band, or obviously likes of Roxanne as well. So again, something to be really considerate about as well. And you can effectively activate Dusclops and Dusknoir, which can be very, very good to like activate that Counter Catch, activate that Roxanne, which I'm a big, big fan of. But we're thinking about all that stuff as well. Like the big thing you want always do in the mirror is focus on your board state. Focus on how you're going to get the prizes instead of actually getting the prizes straight away. Yes, you might go behind a little bit, but as we mentioned before, this deck has a lot of comeback potential, likes of their counter catcher, likes of the likes, if they're playing Legacy Injury or something like that, Enhanced Hammer, the likes of Unfair Stamp, the likes of Dusclops and Dusknoir. There are multiple ways for you to take additional prize cards during the turn, but also additional more ways to disrupt your opponent. Things to watch out for is TM Devo your board away. If you don't kind of like evolve into your Charmeleons, if you kind of just go around and they just like easy spray some damage counters, and then they can use a TM Devo play, because some decks do in fact play this one, and this one doesn't, but I would say if I could, I definitely would. And that's a big scary thing to think about in the mirror. Not removing your 2 prize liabilities in the late game, not removing them from the likes of a Churro or even the likes of the Collapse Stadium can be devastating. So they can easily take the last 2 prize cards that way from that Luminion or that Serendipity still on your bench because you haven't removed this one. Like I mentioned before, be careful when the first player gets to 1 prize card left, because effectively Charizard is always going to be getting the KO. If you get to 1 prize card and they haven't used their Defiance Band, that gets a big 1-hit KO on Charizard EX. So again, something to be very, very scared about, and potentially they can get the KO that way. Also, not responding to Radiant Charizard quicker. It's such a great attacking. Now with likes of Defiance Band or even Dusclops or Dusknoir, you're getting these big 1-hit KOs very easy with a single prize Pokemon. So it is very, very scary in that sort of strategy. So kind of like not responding to their single prize Pokemon is very much a game changer for you right now. And overextending with your Dusclops and Dusknoir. Yes, I know it's so tempting to kind of go, oh, I'm now going to use Dusclops and take additional prize cards this way, or I'm going to use this one to help set up that way. And all of a sudden, you've used 2 or 3 of these abilities, and your opponent's taken maybe even 2 prize cards beforehand. Now all of a sudden they've got 1 prize card left. You've overextended this one, and that's very much a game-changing, devastating board state. So the key thing I want to take about in the mirror match, because this is probably, if you are going to World Championships, you're going to be facing this quite a lot, or generally what you should be going against Charizard. Prioritize your board state, get the Pidgeot set out first, and then go for prizes. You want to have a stable board state before you go into the attacking phase, because you want to have that protection from the likes of Iono, from the likes of a Unfair Stamp, from the likes of a counter catcher Pidgeot play. You want to have a protection and then go in for the attack, because there is a lot of stuff going for Charizard for right now, and it is very, very scary. So without further ado, before we wrap up, let's just look at the list again. I hope you guys are enjoying this sort of version. I'm a huge fan of this deck, and I think right now it is one of the strongest decks to play in the format. It is the answer to nearly every single deck right now. Even in bad matchups like I talked about, you have strategies around this one. You're never out of the game. Your bad matchups can still be made into a good matchup, especially if you prioritize your board state overall. So I want to leave with some closing thoughts. Looking ahead for this one, know when best to use Curse Blast. It is a very fun to kind of play around when gets additional prize cards during the turn. Know when is it good to do with it. You're doing 290 damage turn 2 with a Defiance Band with a Dusclops and Eact as well. So always think about this one. Prioritize Pidgeot over Charizard. I've said this so many times again. I'm going to say this again. you need your Pidgeot first and then go to Charizard. It is a deck where Charizard is your main attacking option, but the secret sauce, the main strategy of this deck is having a really strong board state and support Pokemon. And of course, have fun. This is one of the most fun deck I feel like I've played with Charizard in such a long time. Dusknoir and Dusknoir really do add to the strategy, but also adds to really when you should be doing the sequencing and also with the prioritizing when each thing should be played. I really hope you guys have enjoyed this in-depth guide about Charizard and Dusknoir. If you have, please make sure to like and subscribe. You guys love these mastering videos, and I can't wait to do even more of this one. Let me know down below, what deck do you think I should be doing next? I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. If you're going to Worlds with this deck, good luck, and I hope this is found very, very helpful for you guys. I will see you guys for a video later. Bye for now. Peace out.